Hi Disciples, I want to show you what I call the essential 2-5-1 jazz piano exercise. Alright, so this is how you're going to practice like kind of like shell voicings, kind of like shell voicings except a little bit like combined, kind of like a comping style. So when you're playing jazz chords on the piano, you often want to omit the 5. So let's take a look at a D minor 7 chord. So the 5 of that is right here. So to play jazz, we want to take this out. We often will take the 1 out too, and just leave the 3 or the 7, or you might play like the 1 and the 3 or the 1 and the 7. Kind of depends on what sound you're going for. But the 5 is common to take out, and part of the reason is that the bass player is going to be playing a lot of 1s and 5s, so you want the bass player to come through the mix a little bit, and it also just sort of gets out of the way, cleans things up. It's like a little less muddy, all right? So to practice this, you want that to be intuitive and in your hands. So there's a sort of a cycle that I've developed that I think helps, and it's based on a 2-5-1 progression, which you hear in jazz all the time. It's all over the place. 2-5-1. You probably know it from Sunday morning, rain is falling. Right, that 2-5-1 feel is in jazz all over the place. For good reason. It harmonically sets your ear up to have a satisfying experience. So what I want to show you is a way to voice, or sort of a way to think about an exercise where you can practice the 2-5-1 in a bunch of different keys and using these voicings without the 5. So your left hand is going to go 2-5-1. So in the key of C, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If you're not thinking about scales in terms of scale degrees, you should try and do that. It's going to be really helpful for understanding chords and jazz and harmony and theory and all that stuff. So we've got a 2-5-1. Now, if you want to think about this a little different way, you can pick a note and you want to sort of play the note that sounds, here comes the bride, dun, dun, dun. A fourth above, here comes the bride, is that sound. And the 1 is a whole step below the note that you started from. You can think about it that way. So here are your 3 notes. All right, I think about this shape. Anyway, 2-5-1. You want to get that sound in your ear. So here's how you practice it. You play the 2 with your left hand, and of that chord that you would play in this key, that's diatonic to the key. It's a minor, D minor 7. So we're going to not play the 1 because our left hand is playing that, and we're not going to play the 5 because that's the point. We're keeping the 5 out. We're left with these 2 notes. So watch what happens. Let me show you what it sounds like first. Oh, nice. So it's a super easy pattern. Once you get the first one in place, so you get the 1, the 3, and the 7, so it's kind of like a minor third above the 1. When you get those in place, and if you're just confused, just look at the notes and just copy what I'm doing. It'll sink in. All right? Then what you do is the top hand moves down a half step as this moves up the 4th to the 5, from the 2 to the 5. I'll let that sink in for a sec. And then, remember, your left hand is going to drop a 5th to the 1 of this progression, if you will. So that's a C. And at the same time, this 2 finger here, which is on the F, is going to go down a half step. All right, let me back up and say, if you're thinking about some tricks to help you remember what I'm showing you here, think about half steps for your right hand and whole steps for your left hand. Not that everything you do in the left hand is a whole step and everything you do in the right hand is exactly going to follow that, but it'll help to separate your 2 hands into left hand whole steps or right hand half steps. So here's what's happening. You play the first 2, up a 5th in the left as you go down a half step in the right. And then this next one is a whole step below. Okay, there's the whole step below the one you started. Well, this is a half step on the lower part. All right, now, here's where it gets a little bit tricky. Yeah, it gets tricky now, not earlier. No, just kidding. This stuff can all be hard, especially the first time. So stick with it, and it'll pay dividends in the end. All right. So now right now we have it's almost like we're playing a major. We are playing a major 7 chord, a C major 7 chord. But when we're talking about the 2, we want to now think about this as our new 2, which means we need to turn this chord into a minor 7 chord. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to leave this finger where it is, and these 2 are going to come down a half step. That's it. They come down a half step. Now we do the exact same pattern, all right? So we start with the one, we think about this as the 2 while we play these 2. So we go up a 4th in the left hand, so that's up here, while this top note comes down a half step. Now we go down a 5th, which is a whole step below the one we started from. Well, this goes down a half step. All right, now that's a lot. Let me back up and show you those first 2 moves together in context, nice and slow. So we've got our D minor 7. The top comes down a half step. D, D. Now we need to turn this into a minor so we can sort of change this to be the 2 instead of the 1. So here's a new 2. Down a half step. This part down a half step. And we repeat this pattern. The top hand drops half steps each while this becomes a new 2-5-1 progression. And we can continue doing this. Oh, that is so nice. Let's do it again. Now, if you can kind of do this all the way down, then you're in good shape. Ah, awesome. We got all the way back to D, because if I were to do this again, oh, look at that. We're back to where we started. Now, we got through 6 before we kind of came back to where we started, which means that we have 2 sets of these that we need to practice. There's one other set out there. So if this was the first one, the next one's going to be a half step higher or lower, depending on how you want to start. Let's start lower, I guess. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move all these notes that we started with down a half step each. I'm going to do the same pattern. So we'll put this an octave lower so I have room. All right, and then we're going to do the same thing. This is going to come down half steps each. All right, same thing. This is coming down half steps here. Half step, half step. Then we're going to do this again. See if we can get this in before I have to say hi to my wife and my daughter who just showed up. Do it again. Oops. All right, a couple more times. All right, and if I go down these half steps, we'll see that we're back to where we started. So that got me all the way through those voicings, all right? It got me through all 12 keys of these voicings. And that's a really good thing to practice, just makes your hands intuitively go to the right shapes for these chords. The last thing I'll show you, which is awesome about this, is if instead of playing the 2-5-1, 2-5-1, 2-5-1 in your left hand, you play it above the stuff that you're doing in your right hand. So you have to kind of think through it a little differently, but watch what happens. I think it's pretty amazing, pretty beautiful sound. Now, some people don't like this minor second sound here, but I think it's quite nice, especially when you recognize that it kind of resolves right afterwards. Sounds like Bach to me for some reason. Ah, I love it. Bach loves these minor seconds those minor seconds that kind of like resolve sometimes to weird things. So anyway, something that you can mess around with and play with, but definitely I would do both actually. I think for composing, I like the second option better. It sounds more interesting to me. And for just practicing your jazz playing or your instincts, your muscle memory, this is a super good exercise to do. All right, hope that helped you. See you in the next one.